The missile warning screamed. 70,000 feet above enemy territory. Mach 3. 3 times the speed of sound. The pilot didn't panic. He didn't dive. He didn't dodge. He did something that sounds insane. He pushed the throttle forward, and the plane. It outran the missile. They said it was impossible. One man proved them all wrong. This is history of World War II. May 1st, 1960. Francis Gary Powers sits in the cockpit of a U-2 spy plane, 70,000 feet above Soviet Russia. The sky around him is black. The curvature of the Earth stretches below. He's wearing a partial pressure suit because at this altitude, his blood would boil if the cabin depressurized. He feels untouchable. For 4 years, the U-2 has been invincible. It flies higher than Soviet radar can effectively track, higher than their missiles can reach, higher than their MiG fighters can climb without stalling. The Russians know he's up there. They can see the radar signature, but they can do nothing. They've tried everything. Their pilots push their MiGs to the limit. The engines scream. The planes shake. Then they stall, thousands of feet below Powers. But today is different. Below him, Soviet missile batteries have been waiting, watching, learning. They've upgraded their systems. The SA-2 Guideline Surface-to-Air missile. Longer range, higher altitude, better tracking. And they don't fire one missile. They fire 14. A wall of explosives racing toward the sky. Powers never saw them coming. Shockwave from a nearby explosion ripped through the thin air. The force was catastrophic. The U-2's long, fragile wings, designed only for altitude, not combat, snapped like dry twigs. The plane that was supposed to be untouchable disintegrated in seconds. Powers didn't die. He managed to bail out. But he was captured alive, paraded in front of cameras, interrogated, used as propaganda. Back in America, one man watched the television broadcast in absolute horror. Kelly Johnson, the engineer who designed the U-2. The man who promised the CIA that his plane couldn't be touched. The genius who built ghosts. And now, his ghost lay in pieces in Gorky Park, Moscow, on display for the entire world to see and mock. Before we go further into this insane story, hit that subscribe button. This channel brings you the most mind-blowing engineering and war stories that shaped history. Don't miss out. Kelly Johnson didn't sleep that night. He paced his office, chain-smoking cigars, staring at blueprints, his mind racing, because he realized something terrifying, something that would change aviation forever. If you can't hide up high, there's only one way to survive in enemy airspace. You have to be faster than the bullet trying to kill you. Do you think altitude or speed is the better defense strategy in modern warfare? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But to understand what Kelly Johnson did next, you need to know who this man really was, and why everyone from the CIA to the president trusted him to build the impossible. Backstory: the rise of Kelly Johnson. Let's rewind to the beginning. Clarence Leonard Kelly Johnson was not born into wealth. He was not born into privilege. He was the son of Swedish immigrants who settled in a remote mining town in northern Michigan. They were poor, brutally, desperately poor. At school, the other kids bullied young Clarence. They mocked his name. They mocked his accent. They mocked his patched-up clothes. So Clarence fought back. He fought hard. He fought dirty. He fought until the bullies learned to leave him alone. They started calling him Kelly because he reminded them of a tough street fighter. The nickname stuck. He carried it for the rest of his life. But Kelly didn't just fight with his fists. He fought with his mind. He was brilliant. Arrogantly, dangerously intelligent. He devoured mathematics. He understood physics in ways his teachers couldn't explain. By the time he was a teenager, he was designing his own model aircraft, testing them, breaking them, rebuilding them better. Kelly Johnson graduates from the University of Michigan with a degree in aeronautical engineering. He's 23 years old. Jobs are scarce. The Great Depression is crushing America. But Kelly gets hired by the Lockheed Corporation in California. Most junior engineers in 1933 knew their place. Keep your mouth shut. Fetch the coffee. Don't question the senior designers. Learn by watching. Not Kelly Johnson. On his very first assignment, he's handed a blueprint for the Lockheed Electra, a new commercial airliner. The senior engineers have spent months on this design. They're proud of it. Kelly looks at the wind tunnel data. He looks at the tail design. He looks at the stability calculations. And then he walks into the senior designer's office and says, "This is wrong. This plane is unstable. It will kill people." The room goes silent. Who is this arrogant kid? Fresh out of college, no experience. And he's telling veteran engineers that their design is garbage. The senior engineers are furious. They want him fired immediately. But there's a problem. Kelly is right. The Electra, as designed, had a critical stability flaw. If it had been built to the original specs, it would have been a death trap. Kelly redesigned the tail section. He fixed the numbers. He saved the airplane. The Lockheed Electra became one of the most successful airliners of the 1930s. Amelia Earhart flew on her attempted round-the-world flight. And suddenly, Lockheed executives realized something. They had a tiger by the tail. This kid was special. By 1937, war clouds were gathering over Europe and Asia. The United States military was starting to wake up. They needed modern aircraft. Fast. The U.S. Army Air Corps put out a request. They wanted a high-altitude interceptor, a fighter that could climb fast and fly high. The requirements seemed impossible. They wanted a plane that could reach 360 miles per hour and climb to 20,000 feet in 6 minutes. Every major aircraft company said it couldn't be done, not with existing single-engine technology. Kelly Johnson looked at the requirements. He didn't complain. He didn't say it was impossible. He said, "Fine, I'll use 2 engines." He designed the P-38 Lightning. It was radical. It was bizarre. Instead of a traditional fuselage, it had a central pod for the pilot and weapons. 2 long booms extended back, each housing a massive Allison engine and a turbocharger. It looked like 2 planes welded together in a mad scientist's laboratory. Critics called it ugly. They called it a monstrosity. They said it would never work. But when the P-38 flew, it didn't just fly. It screamed. It was the first American fighter to exceed 400 miles per hour in level flight. It could climb like a rocket. It could fight at altitudes where other planes struggled to breathe. But there was a problem. A deadly, mysterious problem. Compressibility. As P-38 pilots dove from high altitude, approaching the speed of sound, they encountered something terrifying. The air couldn't move out of the way fast enough. It created shock waves. The controls would lock up. The plane would enter an uncontrollable dive. Pilots called it control reversal. They called it the death dive, because once it started, there was no way out. The plane would accelerate faster and faster toward the ground. The pilot would pull back on the stick with all his strength. Nothing would happen. And then the plane would hit the earth at 500 miles per hour. Engineers across America were baffled. No one understood what was happening. Kelly Johnson didn't sleep. He worked the mathematics. He studied the aerodynamics. He ran calculations that other engineers hadn't even thought of, and he solved it. He designed dive recovery flaps, simple metal strips that would deploy under the wing. They disrupted the shock wave pattern. They gave the pilot back control. Kelly Johnson had just saved the P-38, and in doing so, he saved thousands of pilots' lives. The P-38 went on to become one of the most important fighters of World War II. It dominated the Pacific theater. It flew in Europe. It flew in North Africa. And on April 18, 1943, A P-38 carried out one of the most important missions of the entire war. But we'll come back to that, because right now, something even bigger was about to happen. The birth of the Skunk Works, the war is raging. Allied intelligence officers are seeing something terrifying in reports from Europe. The Germans have developed a plane without propellers, a jet fighter. The Messerschmitt Me 262. It's faster than anything the Allies have. P-51 Mustangs, Spitfires, even the P-38 Lightning, all of them are suddenly obsolete. The United States Army Air Forces panic. They're fighting a jet war with piston engines. They're bringing a knife to a gunfight. Urgent calls go out to aircraft manufacturers. We need a jet fighter. We need it now. The Air Force contacts Lockheed. They request a meeting with Kelly Johnson. The meeting happens in a secure room. Military brass. Lockheed executives. Everyone's tense. They lay out the problem. They show Kelly the intelligence photos of the Me 262. They explain the threat. Then they ask the question, how long would it take Lockheed to design and build a jet fighter prototype? 2 years? 3 years? Kelly Johnson looks at them. He doesn't blink. He doesn't hesitate. I'll give you a flying prototype in 180 days. The room goes completely silent. One general laughs. He thinks Kelly is joking. 180 days is impossible. It takes 180 days just to design a landing gear system. The paperwork alone would take 6 months. But Kelly isn't joking. He has one condition. I can do it. But you have to leave me alone. No bureaucracy. No military inspections every week. No procurement officers second-guessing every decision. I pick my team. I pick the schedule. I pick the methods. And absolutely nobody, not a general, not a politician, nobody tells me how to run my operation. It's an outrageous demand. Military contracts don't work this way. There are regulations, procedures, oversight requirements. But they're desperate. The general agrees. If you're loving this story of rebellion and genius, hit that like button. It tells YouTube to share this with more history fans like you. But there's an immediate problem. Lockheed's main factory is running 24 hours a day building P-38 fighters and other aircraft for the war effort. There's no space. Not a single square foot available for Kelly's secret jet project. Kelly doesn't let that stop him. He scouts the area around the Lockheed plant in Burbank, California. He finds an old maintenance building. It's small, it's dirty. But it has a roof. Next to it, there's a plastics manufacturing plant. The smell coming from that factory is unbearable. A nauseating mix of burning chemicals, melting plastics, and industrial waste. The stench is so bad that Kelly's team can barely breathe when they first arrive. Kelly doesn't care. He rents a large circus tent. He sets it up next to the maintenance building. This will be the assembly area. He handpicks 23 engineers. It's the best of the best. The rebels. The problem solvers. The ones who think like he does. He creates what will later become famous as Kelly's 14 Rules of Skunk Works Management. Rule number 1. The Skunk Works manager must be delegated absolute authority. Rule number 3. The number of people having any connection with the project must be restricted in an almost vicious manner. Rule number 13. Access by outsiders to the project and its personnel must be strictly controlled. It's a cult of secrecy and speed. The motto, be quick, be quiet, be on time. Day 1 begins. No computers, no calculators. Just slide rules, pencils, and paper, and brilliance. The team works 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. Kelly Johnson is everywhere. He's checking rivets at 6 a.m. He's arguing with suppliers at noon. He's sweeping the floor at midnight. One day, an engineer answers the phone while wearing a gas mask because the smell from the plastics factory is so bad. Another engineer, overhearing the conversation, makes a joke referencing a popular comic strip about a moonshine operation called the Skunk Works. The name gets corrupted to Skunk Works. it sticks forever. The clock is ticking. They have 180 days. No room for error. No time for mistakes. Pattern interrupt, pause, and question. Imagine working on the most important project of the war in a circus tent next to a factory that smells like burning garbage. Could you do it? Day 50. They're behind schedule. The British engine they need hasn't arrived. Day 80, still no engine. Kelly is chain-smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. His team is exhausted. Day 130. Finally. The engine arrives from Britain. It's the de Havilland Goblin turbojet, shipped across the Atlantic in the middle of a war. A miracle in itself. The team works around the clock, stalling systems, connecting fuel lines, testing electronics. Day 143, 37 days ahead of the impossible deadline. The XP-80 Shooting Star is complete. They tow the silver aircraft out to Mach Dry Lake in the California desert. The sun beats down on the polished aluminum skin. The prototype looks like something from the future. Sleek, predatory, hungry, test pilot. Milo Bersham climbs into the cockpit. The jet engine spools up. The sound is different from any aircraft engine anyone has heard before. A high-pitched whine, scream of compressed air and burning fuel. Kelly Johnson stands at the edge of the runway, cigar clenched between his teeth. His entire reputation, his entire career, is riding on the next 5 minutes. The XP-80 accelerates down the dirt runway. Faster, faster. The nose lifts, and it flies. It doesn't just fly, it soars. Smooth, stable, fast. Kelly Johnson had just delivered the first operational American jet fighter, built in a circus tent, in 143 days, by a team of 23 engineers who refused to accept the word impossible. The Army Air Forces ordered immediate mass production. But for Kelly Johnson, this was just the warm-up act. Because the war was about to end, and a new enemy was about to rise. An enemy that would push Kelly to design the most incredible aircraft in history. Planes that would fly at the edge of space. Planes that would change warfare forever. The U-2 spy plane World War II ends. Germany is defeated. Japan surrenders. But the celebration doesn't last long. A new enemy emerges from the shadows. The Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin, communism. The Cold War begins. And this war is different. It's not fought with massive tank battles and naval invasions. It's fought with secrets, with intelligence, with information. America has a massive problem. The Soviet Union is enormous. It stretches across 11 time zones. Behind the Iron Curtain, Stalin is building atomic bombs. He's building missiles. He's building a military machine designed to destroy the West. But nobody knows where. Nobody knows how many. Nobody knows the capabilities. President Eisenhower is blind. American intelligence has almost no information about what's happening inside the USSR. Spies can't penetrate. The Soviet security apparatus, satellites, don't exist yet. The technology isn't there. There's only one way to see what the Soviets are doing. Fly over and look. But there's a problem. Flying over the Soviet Union is an act of war. If a plane is detected, if it's intercepted, it could trigger World War III, nuclear World War III, unless the plane flies so high that the Soviets can't touch it. The CIA approaches Kelly Johnson with a classified request. They need a reconnaissance aircraft that can fly at 70,000 feet. For context, commercial airliners today cruise at 35,000 feet. Fighter jets of the 1950s maxed out around 50,000 feet. 70,000 feet is the edge of space. The sky turns black. The curvature of the Earth becomes visible. The air is so thin that normal wings won't generate lift. The Air Force says it's physically impossible. Kelly Johnson says, "Watch me." He goes back to the Skunk Works. He takes the fuselage of an existing fighter jet, the F-104 Starfighter, and he bolts on wings that look like they belong on a glider. Massive, long, thin, to reach 70,000 feet. Every ounce matters. Kelly becomes obsessive. He removes the armor plating. He removes the ejection seat mechanism. He removes conventional landing gear. Instead, he designs pogo wheels, small stabilizing wheels that attach to the wingtips during takeoff. The moment the plane lifts off, they fall away. To land, the pilot has to balance the entire aircraft on a single bicycle-style landing gear in the center of the fuselage. It's like landing a flying circus unicycle. The U-2 is fragile. It's delicate. It's essentially a flying camera wrapped in tinfoil. But where do you test a plane that doesn't officially exist? Kelly looks at maps of the Nevada desert. He finds a dried-up lake bed called Groom Lake. It's in the middle of a nuclear weapons testing range. Remote, restricted, perfect. He calls it Paradise Ranch as a joke. There's no paradise. It's 120 degrees in summer, freezing in winter. Nothing but dust and rattlesnakes. But it works. Today, we know it by a different name. Area 51. Do you think the government is still testing secret aircraft at Area 51 today? What do you think they're hiding? Drop your theory in the comments. August 1955. The U-2 makes its first flight. It climbs and climbs and climbs. Past 60,000 feet, 65,000, 70,000 feet. The pilot, wearing a partial pressure suit that looks like a spacesuit, looks down at the Earth. He can see the curvature. He can see weather systems forming. He feels like a god. For 4 years, the U-2 is untouchable. CIA pilots fly deep into Soviet territory. They photograph bomber bases, missile installations, submarine construction yards, nuclear facilities. The Russians can see the U-2 on their radar screens. It shows up as a bright blip. They scrambled MiG fighters. The MiGs climb desperately. The pilots push their engines to the limit. The planes shake. The engines scream. And then they stall. Thousands of feet below the U-2, the Soviets fire missiles. Early surface-to-air missiles. The missiles climb. They explode. Miles below the U-2. The Ghost is invincible. Until it isn't. The shoot-down, the turning point, May 1st, 1960. Francis Gary Powers takes off from a secret base in Pakistan. Its mission: fly across the entire Soviet Union, photograph key installations, and land in Norway. It's called Operation Grand Slam, the deepest penetration into Soviet airspace ever attempted. Powers climbs to 70,000 feet. Everything seems normal. He's done this before. Routine. Over the city of Sverdlovsk, everything changes. Below him, Soviet missile batteries have been waiting. They've upgraded their SA-2 missiles, improved the guidance systems, increased the altitude capability. And they've learned a new tactic. Don't fire one missile. Fire everything. 14 SA-2 missiles launch simultaneously. They create a barrage, a wall of explosives. One missile detonates close enough that the shock wave tears through the U-2's delicate airframe. The wings snap. The plane disintegrates. Powers ejects. He parachutes down. He's captured alive. The Soviets parade him on television. They display the wreckage in Gorky Park. The CIA's greatest secret is exposed to the world. President Eisenhower is humiliated. The Soviets have proof that America was spying. Denying it is impossible. Kelly Johnson watches the news. His ghost has been killed. But instead of giving up, instead of accepting defeat, Kelly Johnson does what he does best. He gets angry, and he starts designing. This is where the story gets absolutely insane. Make sure you're subscribed because what Kelly builds next defies all logic. The SR-71 Blackbird, the ultimate solution. The CIA comes back to the Skunk Works. They're panicked, terrified. Johnson, they can hit us at 70,000 feet. What the hell do we do now? Kelly Johnson leans back in his chair. He's already been thinking about this problem. For weeks. Ever since Powers was shot down, simple, he says. We stopped trying to hide up high. We start outrunning them. He proposes something that sounds certifiably insane. A plane that flies at Mach 3, 3 times the speed of sound. 2,200 miles per hour. Faster than a rifle bullet. A plane so fast that by the time enemy radar detects it, calculates a firing solution, and launches a missile, the plane will already be gone. Over the horizon, untouchable. But there's a massive problem. At Mach 3, the friction between the aircraft skin and the air is so intense that the temperature reaches 500 degrees Celsius. Aluminum, the metal that every aircraft is made from, melts at 660 degrees. The plane would literally melt in flight. Kelly needs a different material, something that can withstand incredible heat, something incredibly strong, titanium. But here's the problem. The United States in 1960 doesn't produce much titanium. The metal is rare, it's difficult to extract, it's incredibly expensive. The Soviet Union. Think about this for a moment. The CIA needs to build a spy plane to spy on the Soviets. But they need Soviet titanium to build it. How do you solve that? The CIA creates shell companies, fake corporations. They operate through third parties in third countries. The Soviets are selling the very material that will be used to build the aircraft designed to spy on them. It's one of the greatest ironies in Cold War history. Project Oxcart, codename for the SR-71 Blackbird program. But building a plane out of titanium is a nightmare. Titanium is incredibly hard to work with. Normal tools break. Normal rivets don't work. Normal welding techniques fail. New rivets. New manufacturing processes. Everything from scratch. And then there's the fuel problem. At Mach 3, the heat is so intense that normal jet fuel would explode, spontaneously combust. Kelly's team develops a new fuel, JP-27. It's specially formulated to remain stable at extreme temperatures. It's so stable that you can drop a lit match into a bucket of JP-27 and the match will just go out. But the strangest part of the SR-71 design? It leaks fuel, constantly. Because the SR-71 is designed to leak. At Mach 3, the titanium skin heats up to 500 degrees Celsius. If Kelly built the plane tight on the ground, the thermal expansion at Mach 3 would rip the aircraft apart from the inside. So he built it loose. It only becomes perfect when it's screaming through the sky. The first flight, December 22, 1964. Area 51. Aggressive? The pilot climbs into the cockpit. But he's not wearing a standard flight suit. Because where this plane flies, the margin between life and death is measured in seconds. The twin Pratt & Whitney J58 engines ignite. They don't just start. They roar. The plane accelerates down the runway. Faster, faster. Liftoff. 20,000 feet, 40,000. The sky turns black. Stars become visible even though it's daytime. The plane accelerates, Mach 1, Mach 2, Mach 3, over 2,200 miles per hour. At that speed, physics becomes strange. If you're flying west, you can watch the sun set, then turn the plane around and watch the sun rise again. In the west, it's a missile test, the moment of truth. Soviet airspace. A training mission designed to test the Blackbird against real threats. The radar warning receiver screams in the pilot's headset. Standard operating procedure for SR-71 pilots is written in the manual. It's shockingly simple. When missile launch is detected, accelerate. That's it. No fancy evasive maneuvers. No chaff. No electronic countermeasures. No diving or banking. Just push the throttle forward. It's moving at Mach 4, but it was launched from behind. The missile uses fuel. Lots of fuel. But the Blackbird is pulling away. Slowly, steadily, the missile's motor burns out. The missile becomes a ballistic object. Gravity takes over. The plane that everyone said was impossible had just done the unthinkable. It outran the bullet. The SR-71 would go on to fly operational missions for over 30 years. And in that entire time, over thousands of missions, through the most hostile airspace on Earth, it was never shot down. The cost of genius building the ultimate aircraft came with a price. Kelly Johnson ran the Skunk Works like a benevolent dictator. He was demanding. He was brutal. He was relentless. He had a famous management technique called the nickel tour. If an engineer made a serious mistake, Kelly would walk up to his desk. He wouldn't yell, he wouldn't lecture. He would simply pull a nickel out of his pocket. He'd flip it onto the desk, and he'd say, "Call your wife. Tell her you've been fired." Terrifying, but here's the thing. His team loved him, because Kelly protected them. Fiercely, when Air Force generals tried to interfere with design decisions, Kelly threw them out of his office. When Pentagon bureaucrats tried to add regulations and oversight, Kelly threatened to quit and take his entire team with him. When accountants tried to cut funding, Kelly went directly to the president. He built a wall around his engineers so they could do the impossible without interference. The SR-71 flew operational missions from 1966 to 1990, 24 years. It flew over Vietnam, over North Korea, over the Middle East, over hot zones across the entire world. 32 aircraft were built. 12 were lost in accidents. But 0 were ever shot down by enemy fire. Every time a missile locked on, the pilot just pushed the throttle forward. In 1990, the SR-71 was officially retired. The government claimed it was too expensive to operate, that satellites could do the same job cheaper. But many believe the real reason was different, that something faster, something more advanced, something still classified, had replaced it. On its final flight, March 6, 1990, the SR-71 flew from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. distance, 2,404 miles. Time, 64 minutes. Average speed, 2,153 miles per hour. The pilots landed at Dulles International Airport. They taxied to the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. They shut down the engines. They walked into the museum carrying the flight log. The ink was still wet. They handed it to the museum director. The SR-71 Blackbird's final resting place would be the Smithsonian, hanging from the ceiling. inspiring generations. That same year, 1990, Kelly Johnson died. It was as if he and his greatest creation were connected by an invisible thread. When the bird stopped flying, the master stopped breathing. Could modern missiles today shoot down an SR-71 if it was still flying? Has technology finally caught up? Let me know what you think. Kelly Johnson designed over 40 aircraft during his career at Lockheed. He won the Collier Trophy twice, the Wright Brothers Memorial Trophy, the Medal of Freedom, every aviation award that exists. He advised 4 different presidents. He changed the face of modern warfare. But in retirement, Kelly watched as the aviation industry became everything he hated: bloated, slow, bureaucratic, controlled by committees and regulations. The man who built a jet fighter in 143 days watched as new aircraft programs took 20 years to develop and went billions over budget. He once famously said, "I'll design an airplane for you, but I won't suffer fools." Kelly Johnson grew up poor in a Michigan mining town, bullied at school, fighting for respect. He never forgot where he came from. He never forgot what it felt like to be underestimated. And he spent his entire life proving the doubters wrong. Today, if you visit the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., you can stand under the SR-71 Blackbird. You can see the black titanium skin. You can see the intricate panel work. You can see where the fuel leaked on the ground. It looks like science fiction. It looks like something from another planet. But it wasn't built by aliens. It was built by a poor immigrant son who refused to accept the word impossible. Kelly Johnson didn't just build planes. He built the future. He built legends. And he did it with a circus tent, a slide rule, and 3 simple rules. Be quick, be quiet, be on time. If this story inspired you, hit that subscribe button right now. We're digging into the most incredible engineering and military stories that history tried to forget. Here's the lesson from Kelly Johnson's life. Bureaucracy is the enemy of genius. Rules exist for people who don't know how to break them properly. Speed and secrecy will always beat size and complexity. The SR-71 proved something profound about warfare, about engineering, about life. Sometimes the best defense isn't armor. It's not hiding. It's not even stealth. It's pure, unstoppable speed. They doubted Kelly Johnson. They said Mach 3 was impossible. They said titanium couldn't be worked. They said you couldn't outrun a missile. Kelly looked them in the eye, and he built it anyway. But here's what they don't want you to know. The SR-71 was officially retired in 1990. But sightings of hypersonic aircraft continued. Mysterious sonic booms over the desert. Unexplained radar signatures. The Aurora Project. The mythical Mach 6 spy plane that supposedly replaced the Blackbird. The aircraft the government still won't acknowledge exists. Does it exist? Is it still flying? What is the military hiding in the Nevada desert right now? That story, we're investigating next week. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway from Kelly Johnson's story. What impressed you most? And make sure to check out our last video on secret World War II weapons that changed warfare forever. Thanks for watching History of World War II. Stay curious, stay questioning, and never let anyone tell you what's impossible.